Maseches Bava Metzia, Daf Mem Amud Aleph. We are now reviewing and revising and repeating and reviving the Mishnah. Let's read the Mishnah again. Skip to where we're holding in the Gemara, and then everything in Metzia Hashem will be well. This year is officially less prepared than usual. I'm sorry to tell you. So I hope that by tremendous Yata Dishmaya we get through. Says the Heilige Mishnah. We're restarting the Mishnah. Mem Amud Aleph. A person deposited fruit, which really means grains of all types, by his friend, which means the friend, the shomer, at the end of the year, can actually give him back to the owner, can give him to the depositor less than he actually received. Why? So we're going to see later in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, there are different reasons. The main reason being mice. The assumption is that, I hope it doesn't happen everywhere. The assumption is that mice eat a certain amount of food, of their food per year, and they're attracted to granaries. And the guy forgot to put the picture of that Rebbe, yes, so the mice are still there, right, of the Kerstira, and therefore, what happens? The mice, they eat. And therefore, if you bring me the what's his name, your grains, and I give them, and I'm the shomer, I gave you back less than you expected, up to a certain amount, that is expected. I'm not a thief. It's just what happens when the mice and other factors eat the food. That's basically the idea of the Mishnah. There are many questions right from the start. In other words, if we're talking here, I'm already asking you the Gemara's question. If we're talking here that the that the owner's fruit were kept separately in a separate room, in a separate bag, in a separate box, then what does Mishnah have to tell me? Whatever you gave, I'll give you back, right? Whatever, mice or not mice, Mickey Mini, I don't care. It's all the same. Elamai, the Gemara says that he mixed them together with his own fruit. The shomer mixed them together with his. Even then, there is a question about ratio. We'll discuss that. But Lamai says, since all the fruit are mixed up together, right? So now I don't know which one's yours, which one's mine, but I do know we did measure it carefully. And when you brought me the fruit, the grains, it was, let's say, 1 ko. Ko is a big amount. Then we say that if I bring you back a ko minus what? Minus the amount the Mishnah is going to say, for example, 4.5 kabin, that is what? That would be considered as normal. That's normal, and don't expect me to give it the whole thing because we assume that the mice ate them. Says the Mishnah weiter, what we're going to see 3 different measurements for 3 different types of grains. Lechitim v'le'oirez, for wheat and for rice. Rice is either rice, orez, or orez may mean millet. Tisha chatzei kabin lekur. For each kur, then the normal decrease is 9.5 kabin, which means 9 halves of kabin, which is really 4.5. 4.5 kabin per core. We said that's 2.5%. That was tried and tested. It's 2.5%. That's a normal ratio of chisaron, of decrease per year. If it's for seorin or doichan, that is for the, what's the oil in this is barley and doichan, which is millet for sure. Tisha kabin lekul. For each kur you have 9 kabin normally missing. That is to say that's 5%. Yeah, that was checked. Now the third one, lekusmin lozera pishtan, lekusmin for spelt and zera pishtan, which is flax seeds, sholosh sein lekur. That's a lot, that's 10%. Yeah, they like it so much, they eat 10% of it, the mice, and maybe there's another fallout. Continues the Mishnah, akol lefi hamida v'akol lefi azman. What does that mean? Akol lefi hamida, that is to say, that is a ratio that is like a sliding scale. It's relative. Per each core, you have 4.5 kabin. Each and every core of, let's say, wheat, from each core, the mice are going to eat 4.5 kabin. That is to say, obviously, if it's 2 core, then it's going to be 9 kabin, right? Okay? Each core is going to have another 4.5, and the bigger numbers, figure it out yourselves. Right? What's the next number? 13.5, I think, right? Very good. If it's 3 core, very nice. Also depends on the time. What do you mean? This decrease is normal to happen within a year. So let's say the chitim were by me for 2 years. Yeah. Then if there were 1 core, 1 year, and then another year would be 9 kabin, because every year the achbarim, they eat the same. They don't go different diets like us. Ketogenic and all that. They do the same all the time. They eat the same amount per year. and that's going to be the scale which we're going to use. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri strongly argues on Tanakama, and he says, what do the mice care? What do the mice care about how much food you have in the storage room? Doesn't make sense. If the person has X amount of if the person has an X amount of mice in his house, lo aleinu, yeah, and they eat X amount of food per year, I don't care whether you have one kur, or they don't care whether you have one kur or two kur or three kur. They eat, let's say there are 10 mice, 10 little mice, and those 10 little mice, they eat X amount, 4.5. That's it. That's what they eat. They're on a regular diet. It's not like human beings. We human beings, we see more food, we eat more food. When do you eat more? Regular supper and an American smorgasbord. American smorgasbord, your Yetzer Hara is overtaking you when you see piles and piles of food up to the sky. But the Achbar are not like that. They're normal creatures, and they eat however much they eat. So why do you say it's relative? It shouldn't be relative. Whether you have one kur or 10 kurim, it should always be 4.5 or 9 or whatever, or 3 same. That's Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's very logical argument. Now, Tosfos, we're not going to see Tosfos inside because we're only summarizing. What did Tosfos say? Tosfos says that the Yerushalmi brings down a Gemara in our Masechta. The Yerushalmi says that the Achbarim are wicked. Achbarim, the mice are wicked. Why are they wicked? They're nice to their friends, but they're wicked to us. If they see more food, they call other friends. In other words, when there's more food, then more mice come. So it's true that the same mouse eats the same thing. But when Miki sees good food, he calls Mini and all the other ones. He calls all the Achbarim together and have a big party, big binge. And therefore, in such a case, Chachomim say, yes, the more food you have, the more mice come. It becomes a very attractive place for them. It becomes a hub. That's what Tanakama would answer to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Now, I'm in the middle of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. What does Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, back to Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, what would he say you have to do? Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, as I told you before, one core for one for all. Whether it's one core, 2, 3, or 10 kurim, doesn't make a difference. You always take off 1% and that's it, because that's what the mice eat. He doesn't believe that they call the friends, or he doesn't think that's enough of a chashash. Rabbi Yehuda, third opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says something else. Im hoysa mida meruba ein lemotzilo chesroinos mipnei shematiros. I'll translate. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the amount was a very large amount, if we start talking about big money, big amounts of grains, says Rashi, that's 10 kor. 10 kor, that's a lot, yeah? We made a cheshbon yesterday. Yeah, a kor is 180, could be 180 kilos more, or maybe twice, could be 360 kilos. That's kor, depends, whatever. And then what? And then 10 of those is how much? 360 times 10, 3,600 kilos. That's 3 tons. That's a lot. Yeah, so if you have 10 kor, which is a big amount, then you don't have to relate to the chesroinos, which means you don't decrease the amount. You, Mr. Shomer, don't give him less than what he deposited, but you should give him whatever he deposited, give him the same amount of let's say 10 kor. Why? Because the grains in the winter, they become bigger. They expand, they bloat, and therefore in the winter they puff up. And that's why, because of the rain makes them a bit, the moisture of the rain makes them a bit bigger, like the cereal always looks a bit bigger in the bowl, right? And that's why you have to say that, what? Again explains Rashi, therefore, although the mice eat, and I don't fully agree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, says Rabbi Yehuda, but I do think that what the mice eat only affects 2 or 3 kurim. Mice can't eat 10 kurim. That's beyond their ken, yeah? Even in a smorgasbord, you can't eat everything, I'm saying that's beyond, it's like diving into a pool of ice cream. I'm not an American. I've never been to an American wedding. I only hear the descriptions. So in any event, my diet is suffering as it is. Let's go back to our story. Says Rav Yehuda, the Achborim, they eat up to 2 or 3 kur, not 10, right? So relative to the 10 kurim, what they eat is really not much. Maybe you want to be nitpicking and say, but they ate something. It's true that it's a small amount that they ate, but still something is there. Din pruto. On that we say no, because their grains usually are deposited in the summer when they're actually thinner, smaller, and in the winter they're usually taken out of the shomer in order to be eaten, right? And therefore, in the winter they're a bit bigger, not much, but that little bit bigger size of each one compensates and balances the little bit of eating from the mice. That's what he says. He says a very interesting thing. The big amount of 10 kurim is not so affected by the achborim. They ate a little bit, 0 point something percent. Okay, that 0 point percent is compensated for by the little bit of growth of each and every grain of wheat in the winter. That's what he says. In a smaller amount, it doesn't compensate. If it's 2 or 3 kur or 5 kur or 6 kur, no, because then we say they eat something not so, they eat something more substantial. The lack, the decrease is there, and therefore the fact it got a little bit bigger in the winter, it doesn't really add up, doesn't really compensate, doesn't balance it. But a big amount of tenku, the achborim's food, the achborim taking away what they subtracted, is compensated, is small, very small, and that small chisaron is compensated by the chita being bigger in the winter. If you don't understand Rabbi Yehuda's svara, neither do Tanakama. Tanakama probably doesn't believe that. But Chavrusa wanted to say that they agree. I don't think so. Rabbi Yehuda sounds like he's arguing with Tanakama, and maybe we'll get to see it more later. Okay, questions. I think Ellen was first, and commercial time. Yeah, can you say something else? Something interesting, by the way. Chavrusa and I were wondering, why do we need all these figures? In other words, Chachomim are stam telling me the scientific thing, or what would be in a colder country? What happens in a colder, advanced country? There are no mice in, I don't know, in some nice refrigerated, in Sweden. I don't think there, in a nice refrigerated, clean place, they would see a mice, they would fall off the cliff. Elamai, I think the pshat is that it's all relative. However much you have for chitim is 2.5%. The next one, which is the se'orin, is 5%, and the pishtan is 10%. So I think the idea is it's a sliding scale. If in your country the achborim don't take 5% from the wheat, they take 1%. The same relativity would be for the next group and the next group. That's what I think is what the Mishnah is telling me about. Similarly to the first Mishnah in Bava Basra, but we're not going to go that way now. I want to hear Rabbi Gitztin's question. So let's go now. Let's skip a bit of Gemara and get to where we finished off yesterday. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Let's see what the Gemara says. Yes, skip a few lines. Go down about 10 lines or less to Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The line starts with the word Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and that is, we just saw what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says. He says, what do the mice care? They eat, the same amount from 1 kur or 10 kur. So it should be one set amount, not relative and not exponential. Tanya says the Brisa. Now, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri makes a lot of sense. What did Tosfos say? That Chachomim answer to him in the Yerushalmi, it says, Achborim, more food, more Achborim come. Yeah? Tanya, Amul Rabbi Yochanan, they told Rabbi Yochanan, Harbe oivdois mehen, harbe mispazrois mehen, which means they told Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, as opposed to the Yerushalmi, we have a different svara. We said mice is not the only reason why the grains actually get lost. Because many times when you have more grains, you also have more of them that are mispazrois. More of them scatter, more of them just get lost. Yeah, in other words, sometimes things just get lost. You can't be nitpicking on each and every grain because it's normal that they just get lost by falling apart, falling off, something happened. And therefore, if you have more stuff, besides the achborim, there's other causes of loss. Mispazos mehen, Tana. Now the Gemara is going to say what I told you before. The Brisa now explains and qualifies the Mishnah. When is our Mishnah right? Or let me rephrase it. When do we need all these measurements? Why do we need the measurement? If we said that it's normal for the mice to eat, good. So if you brought me a kilo, 10 kilos, I'll give you back the same 10 kilos in the bag you gave me, and maybe there's a bit less. Why is that my worry? Says the Brisa, She'ir banim peroisov. Our Mishnah talks about a person that I wouldn't say was very intelligent what he did, He, the shomer, mixed the owner's grains together with his grains. Now gave ace. Who knows what belongs to who. So it can only work with relativity and numbers, and therefore we have to say 2.5%. Aval, but then chinami yichud lo keren zovis. Let's say he put the owner's fruit, or shall I say grains, in a corner. Then he tells him, listen, nobody touched it. You have a separate room, separate corner, separate place. Whatever is there is there. Mais, schmeiss, price, or pice. Whatever is there. You take it back. I don't have to start measuring it. Now, frag the Gemara, and that was another question we had. Think logically. Even if he mixed them with his own grains, the shomer mixed the bilim with his own, yeah, the depositor with his own, my havi. Why do you need to measure 2.5%? Why? Because you should go with what? With percentage. In other words, let me say it in English and then we'll say it in Aramaic. And that was actually my question on the Mishnah. When I first read the Mishnah, that was my first question. If I know, yeah, that I have, give me a number, I have 20 kilos, and then the guy says, Akiva, do you mind to add my 10 kilos of wheat? Looks the same, smells the same, all the wheat is the same. I have 20 kilos and he has 10 kilos, right? Now, why do I have to start measuring percent, shmertent, for give him back 2/3? The mice eat my fruit, the shomer, as much as they eat his, right? So if it's all mixed together, why did the Mishnah have to give me numbers? I'll give you 2/3. That's it. Even I can make that out. In other words, if I know yours is 2/3, is 1/3, let's say, of mine, I'll give you back 1/3. The mice eat everything all the time from both you and me. So whatever is less is the third, even if they're mixed up. That's the Gemara's question. Let us see. See how much is mine versus how much is yours. And if mine and yours together shrunk to, I don't care how much, 2.5%. I don't like percentages. I see that they decreased a little bit. Fine. You gave me 1/3. You'll get back 1/3. It's all relative. Answers Gemara, right. Now we have to make another ukimta in the Mishnah. The mistapek mehem. The shomer, who is the owner of his own grains that are mixed together with the other ones, he started, and that's legal and it's fine. He started lehistapek mehem, to take from them. He started taking throughout the year of Pikodon. Yeah, it's my house, my grains. I'm a very honest guy, and I know that there's two, I don't know, the 20 kilo of wheat of mine, 10 kilo of my friends, and I make sure that I would never go beyond my 20 kilos, but I started taking. So now the relativity broke. Now it comes to the end of the year, we don't have the same even number. It started off by him having how much? 1/3 of the whole. Now there's 1/3 out of, it's not a 1/3 anymore, because the whole number already broke, because I took some of my wheat. So now, frag the Gemara, wait, okay, still there's a solution. You should measure and see how much you took. So if you know that, let's say he gave you what? He gave you 10 kilos and you took 10 kilos out of the 20. Now there's half 10 and half. Measure it and figure out still, even at the end of the year, how much is mine, how much is yours by relativity. And says the Gemara, the lo yodi kama istapek. He doesn't know how much he took. Very good. He doesn't know. Mr. Brown chaps it very well. Yeah, he doesn't know how much he took. Mr. Shomer was not, I wouldn't give my grains to that Shomer. That Shomer doesn't really know how much he took from his own. He's a Yosher. He didn't steal from mine. But Lemaisa, he took without realizing how much, without taking, checks and balances. He didn't know how much he took, but he took and he took. Lemaisa, now we have a whole balagan of not relating to the original number. So we know that he gave me, let's say, 10 kilos. Originally it was 10 out of 30. Now it's 10 out of X. 10 out of X is not a number. It's not a fraction. It's not relative. It's not nothing. Therefore, now we have to measure his things separately. And Chachamim are very much correct for writing a Mishnah that tells you should know. If you have no other way of measuring the relativity of how much the mice take, because you don't know how much it is out of the entire amount, and it's not in a separate room, Chachamim are coming to the rescue. Super Chachamim. They come to the rescue and they tell you should know. The normal, in the times of the Mishnah, let's say, the normal thing for mice to take is 2.5% or 5% to 10%, depends on the grains, out of the whole. And therefore, even though we lost track of anything that happened, we have a general, global idea throughout that tells you how much is normal. And Ellen and I are both right. Nobody can scream at each other. You cannot, the Bailim can't say, are you giving me less? It's normal that that's a less. And the shomer, on the other hand, cannot take more to himself and nick it and say it's the mice. No, the mice have their own set of 4.5 kabim per core. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer im Hoiso. Oh, Rabbi Yehuda says what? What was the third opinion? The last opinion says Rabbi Yehuda, if there was a large amount, then you don't care anymore because the little bit that was decreased from the big amount is compensated by the float, not floating, the bloating, the swelling. Swelling is the better word. Swelling is the better word, right? What I told you, by the way, I spoiled you. I like you. And I already told you the maskana of the Gemara explains Rabbi Yehuda. But the Gemara is going to take some time and process to understand what Rabbi Yehuda actually said. So we're sort of, rewinding now, okay? Says the Gemara, kama mida meruba. How much is a lot? I told you 10. How do you know I'm right? How much is a lot? 1 core, 2 core, 10 core, billion? Okay, we decided it's 10 because Chachomim knew that's the measurement. Okay, asar kurin. And Tanya Nami Hachi, Rabbi Babachana quoting Rabbi Yochanan is now backed by a brisa, which is good because he's an Amora. Tanya Nachi, Kama Mida Meruba, Asoro Koirin, a Mida Meruba, a Mida which is large in a way that the food of the Achbarim doesn't really affect, the eating of the Achbarim doesn't really affect it, is 10 kur. Okay. Tani Tana Kameda Rav Nachman. Now, a Tana, again, Tani Tana Kameda Rav Nachman means what? There was an Amora that quoted a brisa in front of Rav Nachman. And remember what we learned at the end of Perek Sheni? That's what Gemara is all about. These are Amoroim who quote Mishnais and brises that they learned from their Rebbe, and everyone sits together trying to figure out what's going on. So here is the brisa quoted to Rav Nachman, saying, I'm sorry, as follows. The Medvorim Amorim, when is Rabbi Yehuda's statement true? Shemoded lo mitoch gornoi, v'hichzir lo mitoch gornoi, which means there are two different measurements in the times of the Gemara. People, like, let's say, not a very good example, I'm sorry, not a very good example. Which one's worth more, Canadian dollar or American dollar? They're both called dollar. American? Okay. American. Okay. I didn't think otherwise. Yeah. So now, in other words, there's a dollar and there's a dollar, and Israelis can cheat each other, Australian dollar, there's Uganda dollar, in other words, they're worth a lot. In other words, sometimes you have two types. In the times of the Gemara, we learned it in the Bava also, it could be an amma. Remember, there's a smaller amma and a bigger amma. They're both called amos. When you talk about building, it's a base of mikdash, it's 7 tfachim. When you talk about something else, it's 6 tfachim or 5 tfachim. In other words, you always say in English, how long is a piece of string? In other words, let's say we decide there are two types of meters in Israel. There's a meter for measuring, and that's legal. Let's imagine, there's 1 meter for measuring, let's say, furniture, and a different meter to measure houses. Let's say, whatever. Okay? So now, the same thing would be back then when we speak about kav and seya and all that, when they would measure it in the goyren, which sounds like in English granary, in the field, the amount was bigger. I guess it's more like wholesale, and when you measure it in the house, in, I don't know, when you do a house sale or you measure people in home dealings like retailer, then we talk about a smaller amount. So there's a bigger kav and a smaller kav. So far, so good. Not complicated. Says the Gemara, I'm reading again from the beginning of the second line. When is it true what Rav Yehuda says? The big amount was measured in the goren, which means what? When the shomer received the grains, he was in the field, in the granary. Each kav is a kav and each core is bigger. And he gave him back from the goren, which is what? Already a smaller amount. He gave him back a smaller amount to begin with. And because he gave him a smaller amount, then, let's continue. And he gave him back a smaller amount. From the end, you'll understand what we're saying here. Aval, however, modad lo mitoch gornoi. Sorry, no, I misread it. Which means, if the person measured at the time when he gave the shomer and took back from the shomer was the same type of measurement, same value, same volume of kav seyakur, then of course, you give him less. That's what. Then I agree with Tanakama. Then you give him minus 4.5. Very good. Aval, however, Modad lo mitoch gornoi. If when he deposited it by the shomer, he gave him in the bigger amount, he deposited it with bigger amounts, and when they said kav, they meant the bigger kav. Oh, and then he gave him back with a smaller, when he gave it back to him in a smaller kli, smaller kav, that's what Rabbi Yehuda meant. We say, listen, don't give me the chesroinos, because anyway you're giving me less, right? You give me less as it is. You also want to take from the mice? Chutzpah. What are you talking about? You give me less amount to begin with. No, you tell me, and also the mice, excuse me? That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. That would be very nice. Omar Lei, however, the Gemara right away rejects it, and Rav Nachman is now arguing back on the Talmud that's telling him this fantastic brisa. He says, no, that phrase appears a lot in the Gemara. Are we talking here about crazy people? Shuftan means crazy. Are we talking about mad people? Can't be. The Yahavi Bekaila Rabba. You think people are crazy to give the shomer, the banker, so to speak, the shomer, with a big kli, the shakli Bekaila Zuta, and they take it back with a small kli? It doesn't make sense. Who would his right mind do such a thing? That's nuts, yeah? Dilma, maybe what you're trying to say is different. You maybe misheard the brisa. You, my dear Amoiro, says Rav Nachman, you heard something about granary versus house, and you thought that we talk about the measurement of the granary, which is big, versus the house, which is smaller measurement. No. What I told you, the days of the goyren, when do people harvest and start storing in the storage rooms? In the summer. Very nice. And that's what the brisa says. Says Rabbi Yehuda to Tanakama. Now we're explaining Rabbi Yehuda based on the brisa. When do we say what we say? That you can actually take off from the mice food. If enachinami, yeah, I took it from you, and I gave it to you in the summer. I deposited it in the summer, and I took it back next summer. In summer, the measurement, the size, the volume, you can call it whatever you want, of the grains are exactly the same. And then, excuse me, even if it's 10 kur, din puta kedin mea, your mice ate for mine, yeah, so don't take off, don't take more. Or I would say it's actually the one who's actually complaining here, the one who's using the Mishnah is rights is the shomer. The shomer says, don't look at me like I'm a thief. It's normal. Yeah, they took off a little bit. I'll give you a bit less. If you gave it to him in the summer when it's more when it's shrunk, and he gave it back to him in the winter, and here a question. In the winter, they're a little bit bigger, naturally so, then don't take the chisaron, don't reduce the chisaron of the mice, because that small, so to speak, reduction or that small deduction that the mice ate is compensated by the small yet a little bit significant enlargement, and the fact that it's more puffed up and swollen in the winter. Now Rav Papa asks Abaye how shall I say, scientific question. Amaroi many times doubted, the words of their contemporaries. And Rav Papa asks Abai question in Metzia, in reality, if so, are you really sure that those chitim really, they really swell, really bloat a bit in the winter? Is that so? Lifka kada. Why don't you say that if you put them in the kad, if you put them in a jug, why don't you say that lipka kada, the kada should burst, should pop open, should explode, or at least crack. In other words, if you said it really bigger, how come we don't see that in the Lamaisa? You see that it stays in exactly the same size, the same compartment of a cod, and nothing happens to the cod. We don't see it cracking up or opening. Yeah. Answers the Gemara, two answers. First of all, says the Gemara, Hava uvda upoka kada. Yes, sometimes we saw a case. Answers, I guess, about Rav Papa. Yes, there was once a case that the cod cracked open and really burst because the chitim were so much bigger and strong and managed to pop up. Another alternative answer where they don't pop up and it's still true, that they do swell, they do really bloat, but it's still true on the other hand that in the cod it doesn't happen inside the cod, and the jug is not affected. Why? Mishum itzitza. Itzitza means that, look at Rashi says, itzitza doichat, which means when the grain, makes a lot of sense, when the grains are in an open room, in a room with windows, they're affected by the weather more, yeah, and it's whatever, it's cold, it's wet, whatever you want to call it, something in the air affects them, and they become a bit bigger, significant enough for Buddha to say what he says. But in the bag or in the tight closed uh, uh, um, plastic box, or back then cheres box, they're not affected because they're itzitza, they are all stuffed inside. Then in mokem tsar, yeah, in other words, they're very, very stuffed together, they're very cramped together, chock a block, chock full, because they're so tight together, it mainly doesn't allow them to pop up, and the card doesn't pop up either. But the Maisa, what the Mishnah says is true. Yes. Question time, and then the next Mishnah. I'm with you, Ellen. Here's the Mishnah. Now the next Mishnah, similar to the first Mishnah which we just saw, it talks about how much decreases in amount. But before we spoke about solids. Now we're going to talk about liquids. That's the issue of the next Mishnah. So, says the Mishnah, which means shtus doesn't mean nonsense. Shtus with the taf means a 6. In other words, regardless of the amount of wine that you now brought to me, and I now keep it in the cad, in the jug or in the barrel or whatever, a 6 gets absorbed. It doesn't say how much, yeah, maybe in a year, I guess in a year, a 1/6 of the entire amount gets absorbed in the chovis, in the barrel, or whatever the receptacle is. We're going to discuss it also. So when I pour it back to you, yeah, and again, let's say I mixed it with my wine, same old story. We don't have relativity anymore. We don't have way to measure. We know that a 1/6 of whatever you gave me 6 liters, then how much is a 6? What? 1 liter. That's a lot. Gets absorbed in the chovis, and that's why today you should know. Today the chovius in the wineries are really made out of metal. They're not made out of wood anymore. Maybe in the fancy boutique ones, but in the big ones I saw, they're from metal, and metal doesn't absorb. But back then, the materials were such that someone would be absorbed in the casket, in the barrel. So 6. Rabbi Yehuda says not a 6th, even more, a 5th. Wow, a 5th of the whole amount. Why do they argue? The Mishnah is going to explain. They talk about different materials, different places. Now we talk about oil. Let's talk about why. Now it's oil. Out of 100 loig, a loig is about half a liter. Yeah, a loig is about 3 beitzim. A loig is more or less half a liter of today, more or less. So out of every 100 loig, you take out a third. That's 3%, right? 3% of the oil you gave me got absorbed. Oh, why 3? It's not only absorption. Why? Loig umechza, we divide that 3 loig or 3% into 2. Loig umechza shmorim. Loig umechza, log and a half is the shmorim. When you gave me the shemen, the sediments of the oil, apparently oil also has some kind of sediments or residue. It goes back down, right? And somehow, because of that, I have to deduct it to you. Why is that? The Gemara is going to explain. But one thing I deduct is that when you take back the oil from me, after the sediments slowly sank, I really have to give you less, because really what you gave me included the shmorim, which now I'm not giving you the shmorim. You get less, but more quality. Yeah, you get pure, but less quality because all the garbage went down. So that's 1.5. Loigumechza bela. Log and a half is what's absorbed, the oil that's absorbed in the walls, so to speak, of the kli. 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. One would ask, what would be if the oil is purified, is clear, right? Shemen mezukak, purified oil. There was already, the sediments were already filtered out before the deposit. Then you don't take out the shmarim. Then how much do you take? Only 1.5 of the absorption, and you don't take the 1.5 of the shmarim. The shmarim are just not here. Continues the Mishnah. If the kankan, in other words, you have to understand, the person comes, the owner comes with his oil and pours it into the kankan belonging to the shomer. That's what I understand. Now, if the kankan, oh, Chanukah, in 2 weeks, what's a kankan? A jug. If the jug was old, that where the wine, where the oil was deposited, you don't have to actually, you're not allowed to deduce and take out and deduct the what? The bela, the absorption, because old kankanim, because they're already so full of old bliois, they don't absorb anymore. Yeah, they don't absorb anymore. You have an absorption that's already, that's exceeded already the amount, and old ones don't absorb, and therefore you have to give him the entire thing or just 1 minus a half of the sediments. Rabbi Yehuda now explains and says, adds another factor. Let's say a person sells oil to his friend, and they decided on the sale at the beginning of the year, but the oil stays in the house of the moicher. You understand what I'm saying? It's a little bit like in today's world, you have like a card, like a member's card in the shop, yeah, and you can buy again and again with the card. Oh, so let's say back then a person we're not talking about depositing anymore. Rabbi Yehuda is now talking about selling. So let's say Reuven has oil for sale. He doesn't sell it all in one go. He sells it how? Shimon comes to the store and Shimon says, this barrel full of hundreds of liters of oil, I'm buying it now, and as the year advances, I'll take amounts of oil every time I need. Okay? In Hebrew, it's called chofshi chodshi, ravkav. Yeah, you have one amount, and from that, I take again and again from what I previously acquired. So far, so good? Yofi. Says the Mishnah, and I want to see Rashi here also. There's something I'm not so sure, so I'll read you the Mishnah. One who sold him what? Mezukak, purified, filtered oil. All kolim shoshana. Then he accepts upon himself, meaning I think it means to say that the buyer accepts that he would receive less loig and a half. Out of 100, you should know that if you want the oil to be pure, and at the beginning of the year, the oil is not pure. The way I understand it, I may be wrong, and I want to check it more later today. I want to prepare better today. I think as the year goes by, the sediments slowly go down. So when you bought 100, let's say 100 log of oil, which was not purified. I promise you will be purified. It gets purified through the year, I think. Meanwhile, at the end of the day, the difference between the non-purified at the beginning of the year and the purified that you bought for more money, classy, fancy, purified, the difference is 1.5 log. So if at the end of the year you start measuring and you keep the balances and checks on each and everything you got, you say, hey, I didn't get 100. I got 100 minus 1.5, which is 98.5, right? Yeah, 98.5. Then don't cry to me. That's purified. Purified means that there's less sediments. The sediments are 1.5 out of 100. Let's see Rashi, because I'm scared to talk. Look at Rashi. In the narrow lines of Rashi, it's the second to last, the penultimate narrow line. Says Rashi, Kishem shamu b'mafkid, just like they said about a mafkid, a depositor, ken amu b'moicher, they say the same concept of what? Of 1.1 out of 100, they say the same idea also in the person who sells shamoicher shemen lechaveiroi, a person who sells oil to his friend, benoisen loy mitoich chaviyoisov, shumistapek tomid, he gives him from his chavis time after time, tomid, mistapek tomid. Mistapek is to take. He takes again and again throughout the year. Every time he needs a bit of oil for the salad, for the Shabbos candles, he goes to him, the hu mezukak, and he expects it to be purified. The buyer should accept upon himself. Yeah, I was right. Baruch Hashem. He should accept upon himself and realize you can't have quality and quantity, honey. I mean, oily. Yeah, what do you mean? Yeah, you want purified. Purified means less of the original. The original included shmarim. Now purified means 100 minus the sediments are 1.5. So yes, you did get 98.5. Where's the other 1.5? In the garbage, in the shmarim. That's besides the point. We're not talking here about, that's also true, about the absorption. That's chutzah. Fine, that's not the issue now, I think. Says the Gemara, okay, go ahead, your question. Yeah. Says the Gemara, the Gemara now refers and relates to the first part of the Mishnah we just saw. What did we see? how much wine gets absorbed in the casket, in the barrel, in the whatever. The Nakama says a sixth, and Rabbi says much more. He says a fifth. Says the Gemara below Pliga, they don't argue. Malki Asrei, Umalki Asrei. Each one gave psak halacha according to his atar, according to his place. Each one lived in a different place. The Nakama lived somewhere, and Rabbi lived in a different city. Be'asrei demar chafu bekira below ma'itz tfei. In the place of Tanakama, they would not tar it. They would coat it. They would coat it in the inside with kira, and kira is very good. It's shava, that's wax. They would wax it from the inside. They would cover it inside and caulk it and cover it with wax, yeah? And therefore, it would not ma'itz, it would not like motzetz, it wouldn't absorb much. It would only absorb the sixth because the kira, the wax is very good to contain the wine, not to let seep inside too much. I mean, a sixth does go in, but not more. In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they would not do such a great job, and they would tar it. They would use tar. So funnily enough, tar is less than wax. It's surprising for me, but because they would tar it from the inside, apparently that would not be such a good thing. Umayit tfei, and would absorb more. Why? That's what they had. Ibai Sema, another, that's what Rabbi Yehuda, it's a fifth, much more. Ibai Sema, another alternative pshat, Mishum Gargishta, the type of earth they used for the clay. Back then, the caskets were made out of a dreidel, made out of what? Clay, cheres, earthenware. And therefore, the type of earth that originally was made of, regardless of how they covered it or they coated it, the type of earth was different. Earth is very different places in the country, yeah? And therefore, in the case of Rabbi Yehuda, the type of earth would be much more absorbent, and therefore would swallow, in Hebrew we call it to swallow, bola, it would swallow unwillingly, how much? A fifth, oivavoy. In the place of Tanakama, the earth was not so absorbing, was less absorbing, and therefore there they would only absorb the sixth per year and not a fifth. I think it's per year. I didn't see it, but I know the first Mishnah says per year, so the second one is also per year. Says the Gemara now. The Gemara now starts telling us a story time. So far, so good? Questions, comments? Call, dial 177. The Asred of Yehuda, story time. In the place of Rav Yehuda, Ramu, the way they would sell wine was very interesting. Ramu, they would put in Arboim the Tamni 48 kuzi bedana. Kuza is not a word in Japanese, although it may sound that, but it's not. It's not the new Japanese food. Kuza is a small jug. Hanukkah, you celebrate Hanukkah? Yeah, in other words, it would have a small jug called a kuza. I think it's even smaller than that. And every dana is a barrel. Every barrel of wine would contain 48 kuza. They would take the kuza 48 times or measure it that way, and that would be that would be the standard barrel of wine would contain 48 kuzi. Okay, and what was the price? The price is right. Azil dana b'shita zuzi. Each barrel would be sold for 6 zuzim. So now you have to do 48 divided to 6. That's 8, right? 8. Why? You don't know. Where is your? Whatever. I'm very insulted. Okay, so now, yeah, now 48. There would be 48 kuzim in one dana, and they would go for 6 zuzi, right? So each dana, if you separate them, is really how much? Is really 8. No, I know there is 8 in 48. And therefore, no, I'm trying to say how much is each dana. Each dana would be very, very cheap because 48 tamni, 48 of the kuzi would contain 1 dana, and the big dana would go for 6 zuzim. For 6 zuzim, okay? That's all thing together. So how much would be 1 kuza? You tell me. You have to now divide 48 to 6, but it's a fraction already. 6 zuzim, yeah, 48 dani would be sold for 6 zuzim, right? Yes, that says in the Gemara. And I know that 48 divided to what? 12.5% of the whole thing. One zuz would buy you 8 kuzi. One zuz is 8 zuzi. That I know is 8 kuzi. The other way doesn't make a difference. I'm trying to be smart, which I'm not. The kids are 1 zuz would get 8 zuzi. Now, That was the wholesaler. Says Rashi, that's in the Yaakov. That was the wholesaler price. Rav Yehuda, according to Rashi, was a wine seller. Decided one day to be Natsach and Voni. He decided to become a wine seller one day. Paris Rav Yehuda shita bezuza. Now Rav Yehuda, like every good retailer, not wholesaler, he wants to make a profit. How did he make the profit? He would sell each one for 6 zuzim. So is he making a profit? Each one, 6 zuzim would be what? 6 zuzim would be each 6 kuzi bezuz. Instead of selling 8 kuzi for zuz, he would sell 6 kuzi for zuz. He's making a profit, right? The same money, less amount. He's making a profit, yeah? Oh. Now the Gemara gets like this. Zil, Amud Beis. Zil tlasin v'shita b'shita. Now, if you divide the 48 that he originally bought, so 36 times, so 6 times 6 is 36. He sold each one 6 per 6, 36. He broke even. Let's say he sells them one by one. So when he hit 36, he broke even. 36 times 6 is how much? 6 times 6 is 36. Then he got, good. Now, Pashul Treisal, right? He has 12 left. He has more than 12, right? He has 36. How much is 36 plus 12? There's 12 left. 12 left because how much? 48 minus 36 is 12. Very nice. Wait. No. He didn't make so much money. Zil tamni ashtuti. No. But you know the problem is? Because 8 was absorbed. Out of the 12 that he actually had as a profit, 8 got lost. Yeah? Because it's a 6th of the whole wine. 6 of 48 is 8. So how much is 12 minus that were left to make a profit? Baruch Hashem. 8 were lost. Pashalu arbo. He only made profit on 4 kuzi. Right? Good. You good. Frag the Gemara. That's all he made the profit. Is that so? Frag the Gemara. Why so little? Rabbi Yehuda makes some money. Talmid Chochem. The Omar Shmuel. Amistaker alistaker yoser al shtus. Shmuel says, no, sorry. Now the Shmuel says, you see that you're allowed to make profit how much? Up to a 6th. If you buy from the wholesaler and you're the retailer, you're allowed to make money up to a 6th. You're not allowed to overprice unless it's acceptable to everyone. We're going to learn in the next talking about overpricing and the other way. Lamaisa, you're allowed to make a 6th and you make less than a 6th. Why? Because out of all the 48, you only make a profit on how much? 4. 4 is less than a 6th of 48. It is. Yeah. 8 is a 6th. And you're making less profit. You're making too little. You're making half of the profit you're allowed to make. Why? Rabbi Yehuda as a Talmud Chochem doesn't mean it has to be a friar. Answers the Gemara, no. Ika gulfi v'shmaraya. He did make a profit on the side. You know what was marviach? The actual barrel. The price originally included the barrel, and the barrel he stayed with, and also the shmarim. The barrel and the sediments at the end of the year, Rabbi Yehuda is laughing at the end of the story because he sold everybody, and actually the wine didn't make so much profit. But he made a profit because the original price that he paid, including the barrel and the sediments, and that he's left with, and sediments are good because he can reuse them and make another drink. It's called a med or something, yeah? So Lemaisa, he did gain that. He made more profit. If so, tricky. Nafish leitfei mishtus. Maybe now he's making more than his 6. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to make a profit of more than a 6. And maybe together with the chovis, a fancy nice casket, and the whole thing maybe making too much. Says the Gemara, no, that's also deducted. No, he has to be toreach. He has other expenses of that. He gives money to a person to advertise, to sell it for him and advertise to him in the sode, in the shuk, the guy to walk around. Advertising costs a lot of money. Yeah, and therefore, and also some people say Barzenaisa, Berez. He had to pay somebody money to make a professional Berez, which is a faucet in the chovis. So Lamaisa, between all the expenses and all the profits, he made just right, not too little, not too much. He made a 6. Whoa! Thank you very much, guys. You're amazing today and every day. Have a good day, good Shabbos.